All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Going to be giving you guys a detailed breakdown of all the top prop bets for the Monday night showdown between the New York Jets and the San Francisco 49ers. Let's go ahead and get into it. Now, real quickly, just a quick recap from yesterday. Very tilted about this. I mentioned yesterday, not the best board that we had in general. So, I'm happy to go 2 for 3. I mean, we went 3 for 4, though, right? We nailed the Blake Corum not having a role. Too much so, to the point where it ended up being a DNP, although he did play special team snaps. Was correct that it'd be Ronnie Rivers as the RB2 there in that Rams offense. Just tilting there that happened. Just very annoying, actually. But guys, that might be what the board looks like today as well. It's not going to be the most pretty board. We'll jump into all the top prop bets for that. But looking at this game between the Niners and the Jets, we can see it is projected to be a low scoring game at 43.5 points total there. 4.5 points are the Niners as favorites in this game, which definitely interesting there. I know the Jets have a good defense, and obviously the Niners have a good defense as well. We'll see how that Jets offense does, obviously with Aaron Rodgers, but also the one piece of news on both teams really comes down to their receivers. For the Jets, Mike Williams is going to be good to go in this game, but he hasn't really practiced all that much this offseason. Obviously, we're coming from that injury that he sustained, in week 3 there. How many snaps is he going to play? Is he going to be limited? In my head, I'm 50% of the snaps or so, but it could be less than that as well. Jamar Chase played around 50%. DeAndre Hopkins only played 37%. So there's kind of a wide range of potential snaps that Mike Williams could be playing in his first game back. But we could also say the exact same thing for a receiver on the other side, Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is most likely going to be limited with his snaps. How many snaps will he play? And obviously those are questions we don't have the answers to. And I think that's part of the reason as to why the board is maybe not as good as we'd want. And so let's go ahead and show you guys the PrizePicks board. And so looking at it, guys, we're going to see really no prop bets over 54% likely to hit. Again, that's kind of the magic number here. It's kind of been annoying with PrizePicks and Underdog. They've really been limiting bets where we get that significant long-term sustained edge. And they've been much better with their fantasy score props this year. But let's go ahead and touch on all the prop bets that we are getting. So Breece Hall for his under receptions is one that is popping up, about 53% likely to hit. We can see the average sportsbook line has it about 44.36, but they're heavily favoring the under at that point as well. The issue with this one, the issue with Garrett Wilson as well, is that these are being valued as pushes. Now, yes, the tags that we had, the 9-to-5 tag that we have there is the side we would lean towards. I just don't love chasing bets that are the most likely outcome is that it's going to be a push. But let's go ahead and kind of just break down the Jets in general as well. So for Breece Hall, we see the receptions total there, and we see that this is a tough matchup against the Niners. That's not really a shock, but I do think that is obviously worth noting. And so we look at it, guys. He is someone that last season, did get this over receptions a decent amount, but also had games where he just didn't need to get that over as well. So given the fact that it's a low scoring game, a game that they're probably not going to be playing from behind in, can we really, really trust him to get those 4 receptions? I don't know. I struggle with that. And another reason why I struggle with Breece Hall is the fact that you got Braylon Allen there who, looked good in the preseason as well. How much work will he get? Probably not that much. I do expect Breece Hall to kind of get the workhorse workload. But at the same time, I don't really want to bet that one. Now, obviously, if we had to choose, we would be rolling with his under. The next best one that we have, and actually let's just stick with Breece Hall there. So we got 15.5 rush attempts. This is one where I'd want to bet the over actually, but the day is telling us not to. And the reason why I'd want to bet the over is because this is projected to be a close scoring game, and is because it's a lower game total as well. Given the fact that we shouldn't see some egregious game script happen on either side, it should lead to a little bit more predictability, but we see he really did not get that over rush attempts that much last year. We see 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're just looking at last year's trends. He might not get that over. And obviously it's a new year. He's more healthy this year. That's definitely an interesting line there. Now let's go ahead and jump into Garrett Wilson. Again, with Garrett Wilson, the biggest question mark is probably the chemistry between him and Aaron Rodgers. Do they have good chemistry? I would assume that they do. I would think most people would assume that they do as well. And if they do, he should get around 8 targets in this game, maybe more than that. The issue with him, again, is that the Niners defense are a good defense. Now, their weak point last year was against opposing receivers. And so I think that's really kind of the difference with these props. That's why we're seeing Garrett Wilson be slightly favored for the over and Breece Hall be slightly favored for the under. Now, those are the top 2 prop bets. That's why I wanted to spend the most time on it. If you guys want to bet those or not, that's up to you guys. We see some fantasy score ones. Breece Hall, fantasy score under. If you were wanting to bet the under, we're probably going to do that on underdog because they're valuing him slightly higher. Same thing for Garrett Wilson. Okay, this line is somewhat off. So if you're wanting to bet the over for Garrett Wilson fantasy score, obviously you'd want to do that here on PrizePicks. If you're wanting to bet his under, do it on underdog. We are seeing maybe a stacking opportunity there as well, where we can maybe try to do a correlated stack where we're doing maybe Garrett Wilson over fantasy score. I'd probably want to do Rodgers with that, and then maybe Breece Hall under fantasy score. Like, I'm okay with that. The one player that I'm most interested in would probably be like Tyler Conklin. Tyler Conklin is someone that I do think will step up into a pretty sizable role, just based off of preseason camp and all that stuff. It did seem like there was a good chemistry going between him and Aaron Rodgers. And again, kind of the weak point for the Niners is with the receiving game. Conklin is someone that should be seen around 70% of the snaps. I don't really see any in the backup tight ends for New York getting a lot of work in this game. It's just, it would be very shocking to see that. And so I do think we can expect kind of a sizable game from them. But again, looking at this bet, we're being told to bet as under. And so if we were being told to bet as over, I probably would like this one much better. But we don't want to go against Vegas that often. Like, we can pick our spots. I just don't think this is an egregious outlier by any means. And that's the issue with today's slate. It's a one-game slate. It's a concentrated slate. And due to that, all the lines are very condensed. Now, I do want to call with Aaron Rodgers' fantasy score. I probably do like the under a little bit more. He has, for whatever reason, his hometown team is the Niners. He has very much struggled. Shouldn't say hometown team, but the team he cheered for growing up is the Niners. And he has really struggled against them in the past. It's one of the weirdest things because a little bit of unlucky stuff happening and whatnot. But, the team that passed up on him is like the only team he's really struggled against. And so we'll see if that continues in this game as well. But I could see Rodgers being very conservative, kind of like he was with the Packers. What was it, 2020? Even in his last year with the Packers, a little bit more conservative with the football, not pushing it downfield, really just taking what's there. And so if he is doing that, then it is tough to imagine him getting this over fantasy score. Now, I do want to talk about what prop bet is probably the most polarizing to me is this one here with Mike Williams. So Mike Williams obviously being banged up for all of last year, except for 3 games, and being banged up for most of training camp, except for like 5-6 practices. So how much is he really going to play? And I tweeted this out. Like, if we knew that Mike Williams was for sure going to play over 50% of the snaps, I don't even think we'd think twice about this. I think we'd just be loading up on his over receptions and feeling pretty good about it. But we don't know that, and it is a guessing game. Like, I don't want to play the how many snaps is he going to play guessing game because we just don't know that. We're not his trainer or anything like that. So that's one that I'm staying away from. And so really, guys, on PrizePicks, we don't have that many good prop bets. So let's go ahead and jump on into underdog. It's going to be more of the same here. We have one bet for the Jets that's a decent one. CJ Mosley, I guess, for under. That's the Niners. So yeah, basically the exact same stuff here, guys. So unfortunately, any bet that we have here with the Jets, we're going to have to force in there. It's not going to be like a desirable bet if you guys are choosing to bet on this game. That's just is what it is. Obviously, I don't create the board or anything like that. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into the Niners now. Hopefully, we get some better bets. And I would say we are, but at the same time, I don't love them. And so on the board, again, we're really not going to see that we are getting that many good bets. But at least in terms of what I see happening on the slate, we can at least work with that. And so the underdog board is going to be the same kind of as the PrizePicks board. So I'll show you guys the PrizePicks board. And so what I want to concentrate on is really these bets between George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel, because I do think we're going to see a little bit less Brandon Ayuk potentially. At the same time, Brandon Ayuk really hasn't practiced that much. So with the Niners, we do see that when one of these big 3 are out, that the other 2 tend to step up, that they're able to game plan for these other guys to get them going in space. And so really, the one that I probably like the most would be George Kittle, potentially for over his fantasy score, but his over receptions is going to be a good one as well, I think. Now, this one has a very strong chance to be a push, but I would favor the over here. And if we're doing that, we probably are favoring maybe a little bit of the under then for Brandon Ayuk in some capacity, whether that be his receptions of 4, or whether that be his receiving yards. Now, I do think it's worth calling out that for the receivers, this is going to be a more difficult matchup, obviously, right? But again, if Brandon Ayuk is going to be limited, I don't think he's guaranteed to get his over 4 receptions. We saw it consistently last year that he was right around like 5.5 receptions. If you take away about 20% of that playing time, I do think there's a strong chance that one hits as a push, but we would want to favor the under. At the same time, maybe we're just looking at his under fantasy score. His under fantasy score is at 11. So, the issue with that is and kind of with Mike Williams is that they can easily catch like a jump ball in the end zone. I just don't know if we exactly want to bet on that. I think I am probably favoring the less than fantasy score for Brandon Ayuk though. And so if we are doing that, then maybe George Kittle for over his fantasy score, but I don't think we need to go there because there is a slight factor of one of these two scoring a touchdown. That's why the fantasy score is typically a little bit higher than other lines. And so I'm probably staying away from the fantasy score for those two. But I do think if Ayuk is, a little bit limited, then we are going to see Deebo Samuel get maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4, like kind of easier pass catches, those design bubble screens and whatnot. And also, there is a part of the equation that I haven't even mentioned yet. Christian McCaffrey is a little bit banged up. He is currently questionable. He could actually sit in this game. I don't think that's going to happen. But if he is also limited as well, I do think we'll see some kind of easier catches go to Deebo Samuel as well. And so we look at that line for Deebo Samuel of 4.5 receptions. It is the correct line. We're not getting a massive edge there. Only project to get 3.7. Don't exactly love that as well. But again, with CMC a little bit banged up, with Brandon Ayuk maybe not playing a full allotment of snaps, I would rather favor Deebo for his over. And then I do still like George Kittle, but I would stack these together as well. I think that's the approach we should be going with. The issue, guys, again, the whole point of betting on PrizePicks or Underdog, and I'll scroll in again or zoom in here, is this section right here. Okay, we want to be betting on bets that have a 54% edge or better. When we do that, we're going to have long-term ROI against PrizePicks and Underdog. The issue that we have is that we don't have those bets today, so we are forcing some. Typically, we wouldn't do this. Typically, on a normal slate, on a full slate, we just probably wouldn't be using any of these bets. But because it's one game slate, because everyone wants to bet on it, I'm going to be betting on it. It's more fun that way. That's what we have to do. And then lastly, I will say, if CMC is banged up, and maybe Ayuk as well, I do think that increases the likelihood for Kyle Juszczyk to just get a target in this game. Now, it is the first game of the season. I don't know if I exactly want to go in on it being a Kyle Juszczyk game, but if it is, he will have some design passes go his way. We have seen that a few times. So I don't want to do it. I don't want to bet on him getting a target, but I could see it working. Like if you're betting CMC for his under, I wouldn't mind Kyle Juszczyk for his over receiving yards there. Now, obviously, if CMC's not playing much, that's going to mean Jordan Mason's going to get a lot of work. We won't know what to do with Jordan Mason. And so, again, I'm using the PrizePicks board here, but we'll be making this bet on Underdog if we are betting Brandon Ayuk for his under fantasy score. And that is the favorite bet there. So I'm kind of okay with that as well. So let's try it, guys. We're going to do a bet of the day for the slate. I will say, let's just pull up the MLB prop bets that we are getting. A little bit better board there today. We got a good pitching under fantasy score. I know this is an NFL video. I don't need to see that comment, guys. But looking at, guys, we have Christopher Sanchez for under his fantasy score. That is one that's popping up as well. So I don't mind that idea if we want to toss in a couple of MLB bets as well. Maybe a little bit of a game stack here with Chicago. Could toss in Freddie Freeman in there as well, but we don't want to go down too low. So I will be using like Sanchez for his under fantasy score on PrizePicks just as an FYI. That's a good bet, especially in comparison to the Underdog line. That's one we should be using on PrizePicks. Now, guys, shout out to St. Brown for not having a good game yesterday. Not only did that make our Underdog bet of the day cash, it also meant I won a fantasy football matchup that I shouldn't have won, actually. So that was pretty nice. Obviously, Matthew Stafford threw an INT in there as well. So we were able to hit that bet on Underdog yesterday. Kind of lucky, I would say, but we'll take it. Looking at Underdog right now, there's no elite prop bets today for this slate. So I get it. I get if you guys have never signed up for Underdog. Today might not be the day that you do it, but just keep in mind when you decide to, just use the promo code 9to5. You get a deposit match on your deposit up to $100, and you also, easy way to support the channel. I do want to call it as well, on the 9to5 membership, currently have this discount going on the website. Use the promo code Keep Cashing to make your $10 a month membership for your first month $8. It's a great value, already the best value out there for fantasy sports. Take advantage of that. Now, I guess while I'm getting into the bet of the day, I should show you guys a decent prop line difference that we have for Brock Purdy passing yards. On Underdog, you probably are slightly favoring the over. On PrizePicks, you're favoring the under. A little bit of a middling opportunity there. So just be on the lookout for that one. Not a terrible one. Kind of same thing with CMC. We're seeing his rush yards be off a little bit. Breece Hall rush yards off a little bit. And then Brandon Ayuk's receiving yards are off a little bit. George Kittle's off a little bit. So just want to call that out for you guys. Obviously, these lines will be updating throughout the day. They'll probably be closer, but if you guys see a bet there that you like, just make the most informed decision you can possible. Now, again, guys, this is an ugly slip. I want to keep reiterating that. I can't control it. I think everyone knows that. But there is a little bit of correlation, I would say, here. So if Ayuk is struggling, and let's say CMC is banged up, then the slight prop line difference that we were seeing between PrizePicks and Underdog for Brock Purdy's fantasy score, that should correlate. And regardless, let's say that is happening, I do think that that would definitely increase the likelihood of George Kittle getting over 4 receptions. Now, we have to do 3.5 receptions on Underdog right now. That might change throughout the day because that's all that's available. It's like 0.85 is the payout adjustment, which I don't love. I kind of hate that. That's what we're presented with. And then let's say it is a defensive battle. I don't love the idea of really putting Rodgers and Breece Hall together necessarily for their under fantasy scores, because who else is going to score the touchdowns for them? Maybe I'm right about Braylon Allen having a potential goal line workload. I just don't see that happening in week 1. Now, Breece Hall was the better bet on paper to get his lower fantasy score, but Rodgers had the biggest prop line difference between PrizePicks and Underdog. So it is a little bit of a toss-up. Obviously, this is going to be a flex bet, so we'll see. Hopefully, it cashes. All right, guys, that's going to be all for today's video. We'll be coming out with a week 2 preview props video once those lines are released and once we get a decent board out there. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks for watching, guys. Good luck on this Monday night. And as always, let's keep cashing.